This lady will not let me speak to my kids.
Our sad 7-part story, so you don't have to. I do want to give a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about child abuse. That's Lex, and she's telling the story of how her biological mother manipulated her into losing custody of her own children. Back when Lex was growing up, she only lived with her biological mother until she was about 10 years old, and then she ended up going and living with her father. Her mother was in a very toxic relationship and just wasn't the best place for her to be there. So she doesn't have a close relationship with her bio mother at all. Her bio mother's name is Martha. She had her first kid when she was 19 years old and then got her first apartment when the baby was only 3 months old, and she's had her baby ever since then. She's had both of her children with her since they were both born. Lex's relationship with her baby daddy was very toxic as well, and so when he ended up kicking in her front door, she got evicted for that apartment. So then she decided to move to Texas. She didn't have any family in Texas outside of her biological mother. So back in September of 2022, she actually was put on probation for a misdemeanor because she had a failure to identify. She got pulled over. He asked her for her ID. She gave him a fake name because she knew she had a warrant out and she didn't want to be arrested. She signed a 1-year probation for that. So when she first moved to Texas, she was able to get an apartment. The eviction hadn't hit her records yet, but once she tried to move from that apartment, that's when she got hit with the evictions on her records and she wasn't able to actually move. The only other option she had was to either be homeless or to rent out an apartment illegally. So she rents out the apartment illegally. Shortly after this, Lex gets a call from Martha, and Martha is saying, "The cops just left my house. I just want you to know I will never lie to the cops when they ask me any questions." And Lex is like, okay. A few days later, Lex is in the kitchen making breakfast for her kids. She hears a loud ass knocking on the door. She's not dressed, her kids are not dressed, but she realized like the police are gonna burst through her door if she doesn't open it. So she quickly opens it, and they basically tell her that they're gonna have to arrest her. And she's like, "I'm not leaving until someone comes and takes my kids." Her firstborn was her son, then she had her daughter. So she calls her daughter's baby daddy. He's like, "I can't come get them." She calls her biological mother, Martha. She says she can't get them. So ultimately, her baby daddy's mother ended up coming and picking them up. So she comes and gets the kids. Martha ends up picking up the kids from the other grandmother's house. She ends up being in jail for I think 3 days. She bonds out. When Lex bonds out of jail, she ends up finding out that she violated her misdemeanor probation. So now she ends up back in jail for another 6 weeks. This time they're staying with her mother, Martha. While in jail, Lex never gets to see a judge until the day that she gets released, right? So she's just sitting in there waiting to see what ends up happening. Upon Lex's release, she finds out they've repossessed her car. She's 2 months behind on rent now. So she ends up asking her friend to take her over to the kids to pick them up. She calls up Martha and she's like, "Hey, I'm on my way to come get the kids." And Martha's like, "Hey, you know what? The kids are really comfortable. They're settled in. Just get on your feet. Get on your feet, do what you need to do to, get your life together, and then come get the kids." Lex is saying, "They're going to be safe with my mom. I will have the opportunity to get on my feet. This is a great idea." So she goes on to, couch surf at her friend's house. She quickly gets back on her feet, and this is when things kind of go left. She decides that she's actually going to move back to Chicago, where she has majority of her family. She buys her kids winter clothes. Mind you, the entire time that they're at Martha's house, Lex is still sending groceries. She's still in communication with her kids constantly. She's doing everything she can to be present, so she tells Martha "Hey, I got the kids winter clothes. We're going to be moving to Chicago." And this is when Martha decides to go ahead and file a restraining order and then file for emergency custody of the children. She lives in Smith County, Texas, where she said it's a very racist, very prejudiced town. When she went to her first hearing over the custody battle, she saw that the judge actually already knew her mother. Not only was the judge the bishop of the church, but he was also her son's basketball coach the entire time that he was staying with Martha. Lex asked him, "Can you recuse yourself? There's a conflict of interest here." And the judge goes on to say, "I do know this very nice lady from your son's basketball games, but I don't think that's gonna, cloud my judgment in any way." Lex also ends up finding out how expensive it is to get a custody attorney as opposed to a criminal attorney. The custody attorneys were asking for $10,000 retainer off bat. Now, neither baby daddy ends up showing up to the court hearing, so the judge ends up resetting the hearing, right? At the end of it, he asks, "Hey, do you guys have any questions?" So Lex is like, "Hey, is there anything stopping me from going and picking up my kids right now?" And the judge was like, "No, there's no order set in place right now." So she's like, "Okay, bet." So she leaves the courthouse, she goes straight to her daughter's daycare, and she picks up her 2-year-old daughter. Now, her son's graduation was creeping up, so she wanted him to finish out the school year, she wanted him to enjoy himself, so she just took her daughter. So Lex ends up getting a phone call from her dad's mother, so her own grandmother. She's like, "Hey, your mom just wants to know that the baby is safe, that she's all right." And so Lex is like, "I'm not understanding why this is even a question. Of course the baby is safe." And so she just sends her a picture of her and her daughter at the aquarium that day. And she's like, we're at the aquarium today. Fast forward 2 hours, Lex and her baby are walking through the aquarium. All of a sudden, Martha comes running up, trying to grab the baby girl out of Lex's hand while she has the baby in one hand, and she has the stroller in the other. She's over here like, get off of my child. Martha's over here grabbing on the stroller. Everybody around starts recording. Martha starts yelling like, this is a custody battle, like mind your business, you don't know what's going on, da 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 da. And Lex is like, get off of the stroller, like what is wrong with you? Mind you, baby girl ends up hitting her head while all of this commotion is happening. So Lex is like, what are you doing? Like, why are you even here? Martha's like, there's a new order in place. You need to give me this child. Lex is like, we just went to court about this. Like, there is no order. I was told I can go get my child. So she hops in the car and she actually pulls off. Come to find out, she calls the constable of Dallas, which is like their appointed law officer. And he basically says like, I told Martha not to approach you. There is a new order in place. And so she goes back to the aquarium because, again, remember, she's on probation. She does not want to go to jail. She hands over her daughter back to Martha at this point because she's like, what else am I going to do? So the whole aquarium situation happened May 2023. She does not get to see her kids or talk to them for the next 7 months. So shortly after that, she ends up deciding, I'm just going to drive to Tyler, Texas, which is where her biological mother, Martha, and her husband, Floyd, live. She drives up there. She takes the supervisors that the court has appointed by that time. She takes her baby daddy's mother, Miss Joyce, and then she takes her baby daddy's girlfriend of 6 years, Drika. Lex walks up to the door. She's like, knock, knock, knock. This is my supervised visit. I have my supervisors in the car with me. Can I please have my children? The husband, Floyd, comes to the door holding a pew-pew in his hand, like, what? What are you talking about? Da-da-da-da. Go get them, and basically chases them off of his property, telling them like she hasn't listened to the orders, she needs to go ahead and pass a drug test, like all of these things, and basically like creates this whole scene in front of the house. She has the whole thing recorded, and they basically leave because they're like, okay, this is going to become a very dangerous situation. Mind you, her son is watching all of this from the window. So at this point, it's becoming very clear to Lex that this is a very serious situation. So she decides to go ahead and hire a lawyer. She goes through about $1,000 worth of consultation meetings to no avail. One of them is like, oh, there's a conflict of interest, I can't help you. The other one is like, hey, does your parents have money? And when she said, yes, they do have money, he's like, yeah, I can't take you. And neither of them, mind you, offered her refunds. And then finally she found another one that was like a $3,500 retainer. And she's like, okay, cool, I can do this, because everybody else was between like $7,000 and $10,000. So in December, she pays $3,500 to that lawyer. He decides to reset the case like 3 or 4 times to the point that the judge got annoyed and was like, no, this case is moving forward. We're not delaying it any further. So when they finally sit down to like go through everything, he basically asked her, how many kids do you have? And she's like, I've driven to see you, we've talked on the phone, we've messaged, and you don't even know how many children I have. Martha and Floyd were asking for her to only be able to see the children under supervised visitations, paying $75 an hour out of her pocket to go to a facility to be able to see the kids. And on top of that, paying $600 a month in child support. Finally, when she got the lawyer, that's when he was able to work a deal and not have her doing the $75 an hour visitations and paying the $600 on top of having to travel to the facility in order to see her children. The judge was like, no, you're right, this is a financial burden. She doesn't have to pay the $75. That's when the judge decided we'll make Miss Joyce and Drika both the supervisors, and she can just pay the $600 a month in child support. So fast forward, it's her first supervised visitation. Miss Joyce was there. The kids had just come back from a trip to Washington, and you know, Lex is asking them like, how was it? They're telling her like, yeah, we played with our uncle. And then they also mentioned like some other things, and then all of a sudden, baby girl who's 2 years old looks at her mom and she goes, I want Pop Pot dead. And Lex is like, what? Maybe I misheard her. She's like, what'd you say, baby? And she's like, I want Pop Pot dead. And Pop Pot is what they call Floyd. When Lex asked her, why do you want Pop Pot dead? She says, because when he makes me play monsters, it makes me really sad. And so Lex is like, this is so weird. So she's like, let me take my baby over to the corner. She had her dog with her that day. So she's like, you want to come feed the dog with me? So she takes her over to the corner. She's feeding her dog. They're talking a little bit more. She's trying to get more information. Because this unlocked a memory for Lex where she got in trouble when she was like much younger. She was living with her mother. She was in the closet and she was doing like inappropriate, you know, behaviors with a teddy bear. And her mother walked in and was like, what are you doing? She got in trouble for it. So backstory, she ends up finding out in court that Lloyd was actually involved with her mother since she was 3. She thought he got involved with their family when she was 5. Lex is like, what do you mean, like, you playing monsters? Like, what's monsters, you know? And this is when the daughter says, we play monsters in the closet. And so Lex is like, do you have toys in the closet? Like, what's in the closet? And this is when baby girl is like, Papa has a sword and it shoots out water. Lex is like, they know what a water gun is, they know what a sword is, these things are around them, so they know the difference. And then Lex is like, is it a big sword, is it a little sword? And the baby girl is like, it's a little one. And she's like, where is the sword? Is he holding it? Where is it at? And then baby girl is like, no, it's on him. So this is when Lex asked her daughter to draw her a picture of the sword. If you want to see what she drew, you can go to part 2 and find the drawing. But she basically drew like a cylindrical kind of shape. So the wild thing is back in May 2023, when the judge said like, hey, there's no order, and Lex went and picked up the baby from daycare and she was with her for a short period of time. Lex was getting dressed. She had just gone out the shower and she bends over to do something, and her daughter took a comb and she inserted it inside of her own mother. And Lex was like, what the hell? Like, why did you just do that? Like, where did you learn that from? Immediately, Lex called CPS and reported this and said, I don't know where my daughter learned how to do this, but she just did this. When she made that report to CPS about what her daughter did, that's when everything got shut down between Martha, Floyd, the kids, and Lex. Like, communication was completely cut and she wasn't able to talk to her kid. Lex decides that she wants the medical records of her daughter, and it was so hard for her to get the records. It took 4 times. She had to prove that her name was on the birth certificate, that she's the mother, all of this, right? She finally gets her daughter's medical records, only to find out that her daughter had been dealing with UTIs. People in the comments were already telling her as she was starting to share her story, like, get that baby checked, get that baby checked. But when she went to a few different hospitals in Texas, they basically told her, unless you have a police report, we don't do sexual assaults kits on minors. The symptoms written were like pain and burning while urinating, but when she looked at the paperwork, after doing a little bit of research, she found out they never ran any STD tests. So at this point, Lexus called the CPS at least twice, right? She called her when her baby girl put the comb inside of her, and she also called after the whole Tyler situation when Floyd came and pulled out the pew-pew on them and the son witnessed the whole thing. So now it's August 2024. She puts in a police report. The police obviously take things like this very seriously. They go to Tyler. They ask Floyd questions. He says nothing like that at all is happening. The police end up getting a forensic psychologist to also come out and talk to both of the children. Both of the children, I guess, didn't display any signs that led the police to think that these, claims were founded. So the case was closed. They actually tried to say that Lex is like a drug user. And that was their excuse their entire time. She never had any drug cases. The only time she ever got tested and like came negative for something on a drug test was for gardening, for MJ. And so she's like, I've never had a drug case. She showed us her charges that she's had. She has charges for failure to identify. She had the charge for the fraud for the apartment. And then she had a traffic violation. Nothing about drugs, nothing for CPS, nothing like that. Floyd and Martha, though, were determined to make Lex look like she was just this horrible parent. They even told the cops that they had both of the children since birth. And she found this out while she was telling us during the story time that they said that to the cops. Every case that Lex turned into CPS to have looked at was always closed. And so Lex at this point obviously is torn, right? She doesn't want it to come back and they say like, yes, your daughter or your son has been getting violated. She was actually relieved. She was like, okay, cool. Like, they're fine. Like, my kids are not being violated. And so it was a very mixed emotion, but her intuition, her gut feeling, and we talk about this a lot, but her intuition, the back of her mind, something was like, something's not right. So she ends up finding out from her biological mother, Martha, like, hey, we're actually going to Atlanta. Me and your son are going to be back a little sooner, and then Floyd and your daughter are going to stay in Atlanta for a week with his parents that are like very elderly, and then they're going to come out too. And immediately Lex is like, not after everything I found out. Are you going to let my daughter stay with this man in a house by himself with elderly parents that can't do anything for a week? There's absolutely no way. She's like, what's the reason for them staying there, right? Mind you, at this point, they're talking through a court-appointed app. They're not talking just through text messages. And so she's like, if it's a babysitting, if it's like childcare that's an issue, I'll pay for a babysitter. Like, matter of fact, I'm her mother. Just give her to me. Like, I'll watch her. Why is she staying in Atlanta for a week? And she's like, look, Floyd hasn't even downloaded the app. I can't talk to her for an entire week because he doesn't have the app. And so all Martha writes back is, oh yeah, don't worry, Floyd would go ahead and download the app so that way you can talk to him and then be able to talk to your baby in turn. And then Martha goes on to be like, oh, also, did you pay this month's child support? Did you send it to the Attorney General? She contacts CPS. They can't do anything about it. Floyd and Martha are able to take the kids over to Atlanta. So then Lex ends up finding out as well that her son, who's 8 at the time, was taking showers with Floyd. And when she asked Martha about that, Martha goes on to say, oh, it's very normal for kids to take showers with their grandparents. And so, of course, Lex goes and reports that to CPS. They talk about it during the court hearing. The judge goes on to tell tell Floyd, like, you're playing a very important parental role. Like, I acknowledge what you're doing here. It's becoming just so clear. The judge, the CPS, the police, they're all either scared of Floyd and Martha because of how much money they have, or they're just corrupt. It's one or the other. So Lex is talking to a friend, and the friend is like, give me your mom's number. She doesn't know what she's gonna do with her mom's number. She ends up going and texting her this whole thing, like, you're horrible, you're terrible. So then Martha and Floyd go and print out those messages. They take it to court, and they're like, look, this is Drika. This is her messaging us, threatening us. We're scared of her. We're scared of Miss Joyce. We can't let them be supervisors anymore of the visits. And so the judge revokes the visitations now. So then at this point, Lex gives us a little bit of background about her older brother, Devin, who's 4 years older than her. And he wet the bed up until the point that he was 10 years old, right? And she genuinely believes that something happened to him that was very traumatizing, because the minute he left high school, he became a drug addict. And so she's like, there is a pattern of abuse and neglect in that house, and the last thing I want is for my children to be there. Her brother basically told her, like, Lex, don't you remember we used to kiss underneath the covers? And Lex is like, what? I don't remember that at all. Mind you, she was 4 at the time and he was 8. So what sparked Lex to come on social media and share her story was, she's on the phone with her son. She's asking him about, like, you know, baseball practice, basketball practice, all of that. And then he tells his grandmother, who he calls Gigi, he goes, Gigi, I think I'm gonna throw up again. And then Lex asks her son, like, how long have you been throwing up? And he goes, a few days. And before she can ask any more information, Martha grabs the phone and hangs up. So at this point, Lex is done. She's like, not only does Martha work at an elementary school where she has access to other children, but at the end of the day, she needs to be brought to justice. Like, you cannot just do this. You cannot just, like, take someone's children because you decided, nope, I'm gonna raise them instead. It breaks Lex's heart when her kids ask her, like, when can we come home? And she tells them soon, but she really doesn't know when that is gonna actually be. She goes on to show us this picture of this woman named Penny Clarkston. This was the woman that was signing off on all the restraining orders, all the emergency custody orders. Now this woman's in jail, and she read her long list of, like, charges. I'm gonna read it from my notes because this woman's charges are long, just to show you how deep the corruption goes in Smith County. This woman's going to jail for falsifying, filing, and destroying file documents, issuing subpoenas outside of her legal authority, failing to issue warrants in a timely manner. This is the one that's wild to me. Failing to issue warrants without proper authority, resulting in illegal arrest. And so this woman was, when I say corrupt, and she signed off on all of the orders that were in Lex's case. Lex also brings up the fact that it's weird that Judge Ellis had the phone numbers of both Martha and Floyd, again establishing that they had a pre-existing relationship. Him being their bishop along with being the boys basketball coach definitely blurred the lines. There's no way that they didn't. And so, like, now Lex is asking for resources. She needs PIs to help her out to, like, get more information. If you guys have any resources you can send to her, please do so. Right now, where the case stands, it seems like Martha and Floyd are refusing to let Lex see her kids unless she goes and takes another drug test and she goes positive. And she's like, look, it was for weed. I've already stopped gardening. Just let me see my kids. And they're just like, nope, we're not letting you. Lex, I'm so sorry that you have to go through this. This is actually completely heartbreaking. I hate to hear a story where a mother that is willing and wanting to have her children with her stripped away. I get it. Everyone makes mistakes. You were trying to do what you had to do to be able to keep your kids safe and have a roof over their heads. You were young. I'm sure you've learned from your mistakes. I really do hope Smith County is able to adjust this and give you the justice that you deserve and put your kids back in your hands. I really do pray those kids are not being touched. I would not want that even on my worst enemy. Outside of that, you guys tagged me in this bunch. I wanted to make sure that you guys got this out here. Lex also actually greenlit this story and told me that it was good for me to tell, and she wanted me to help her, spread awareness. So please do your big one and get the story out there so that she can get the justice that she needs and get her babies back in her house. I appreciate you guys as always. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye.